Awakened from my euphoric deep sleep by my itchy 5 o'clock shadow, I peer over the quilt at the man sleeping peacefully next to me. My heart sinks into the somber reality that jolted me out of my blissfully dreamy state. Life's no picnic for him either. When he awakes, that peaceful glow will quickly evolve into a deathly white pallor. Sitting on the edge of our bed, visible through the early morning silence, I see the pictures on the mantel of the two of us. Various contrived images of the two of us displaying fake happiness at the expected social events couples go to. On my way to work at the ad agency, I tune my portable radio from some sappy love song to the news. A new order of the People's Party announces a crackdown on books and other controversial media to maintain peace and one-mindedness for all. The two suns in the sky shine brighter today on our troubled planet. They give some warmth as each year seems to get a little colder. No one seems sure why, as we're not really allowed to talk about it. Like every early work morning, I pass people on the street. Men walk side by side and women walk side by side, oblivious of each other. At my job, we are working on a new advertising campaign for the government. We are promoting the two new vacation resorts that recently opened, the Purple Lakes for like-minded women couples and the Silver Red Sands Lodge for men couples. The slogan we've been toying with is "Get away to a place where introspection is the greatest joy." None of us are really happy with that, but those are part of the guidelines handed down by the People's Party. On the walls are assorted sheets of older ads we made showing happy male-male and female-female couples enjoying our questionably useful, genetically engineered products in the home, beach, and other fake backgrounds. Men and women generally don't interact, except for casual acknowledgments or for business transactions. A smile and customary nod is the generally approved social connection. Apparently, I occasionally cross the line with one of the female employees. Maybe it's too broad a smile or a suggestive wink, and she immediately freezes up. Her eyes widen, and with a disapproving, subtle shake of her head, she slowly turns to her female colleagues, and she's magically smiling and animatedly engaged in conversation with her colleagues, as if there was no interaction between us. At the end of the day, I pack my shoulder bag and on the way out pass through security. That's where I exhale my breath to test for genetics and a quick brain scan. This is all a routine formality enacted after the long-ago Great Plagues that decimated our population, but to me it all seems strangely suspicious. On the way home, I make an obligatory stop at the People's Mindfulness Chapel, which is the state's only approved religion. I'll explain a little about it in case you didn't already know. From my understanding, besides our planet having two suns, we have two moons, and they are on slightly different orbits. According to the ancient texts as written in the book, as interpreted by the One Truth Sayers, who are government-appointed clergy, the two suns are male and our two moons are female. People have been paired up this way gradually over the centuries, more and more, by government control. Personal choice, freedom, and happiness are way overrated and often lead to the overall disharmony of our race. This is what we have been told. The book is actually 3 books in one, and there is some debate in closed circles about which one to follow, as they often conflict with one another. The older first book was filled with poetic stories of people, their lives, and overcoming life's obstacles. In that era, people were free to choose their mates, no matter what their gender. Male, 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 female, female, female. No one particularly cared as long as no harm was done. In the second later book came the Great Plagues. Pestilence, starvation, and wars evolved. The early truth-sayers wrote in this book how the two sun deities were men and the two moon deities were women, and that was the natural order of life. The four deities gave the gift of 10 edicts. These were written in the sky, but only the truth-sayers could see them. True happiness is from introspection, not from the pleasures of another. Do not laugh too heartily, do not celebrate too heartily, as your true reward will be on the other side of the great divide. If man finds pleasure with a woman, they must both be liquidated, according to the ancient second book. The prescribed punishment of the day was impalement, a slow, agonizing death on public display. This painful exhibition was both to expunge your transgressions and to be a warning to others to obey the truth-sayers. The symbol of the truth-sayers is the impaling post. It sometimes has an agonized victim suffering on it, or it's just a post with a sharp point on it. People who wear the symbol often get preferential treatment. This symbol is often a gold trinket worn around the neck by the most devout believers. They occasionally poke themselves with the point to remind themselves that true happiness awaits them across the great divide. The third chapter or part of the book is mentioned, but we never get to see it. Only the truth-sayers can have or read it. Today is the 5th day of our 10-day week. On this day, those wishing to have a child and have been genetically matched report to the People's Family Reproduction Center. Men sit in one room with their partners, women in another room. They all read fanciful literature with happy illustrations about the joy of raising a child in the one truth-sayer's tradition of one religion and of man-man, woman-woman families. The woman is fortunate and excited to have an implanted, genetically tested, fertilized egg in her womb. There is an endearing but subdued celebration that evening. On my way back home, scratching my arm, I casually remove the medicated patch placed on me by a mandate from the government. It is supposed to protect all of us from the great plagues of long ago. Instead, I believe it suppresses emotion, desire, and any dangerous feelings of sexuality. This tool of the People's Party causes a slight strange euphoria and apathy. The great masses are more docile, more controllable for the greater good. That's the theory of a minority of outlawed freethinkers. These thoughts are dangerous. Thank the four deities we don't still impale people anymore. What we do have is a treatment of frontal cortex analysis, basically a lobotomy, and a reproduction consultation, which is forced sterilization. My arm drops by my side, the medicated patch drops from my hand into a sewer grating as I cross the street. Pretending that same itch still bothers me, I adhere a blank patch in the same spot. After a brief contemplative run in the park, as the two suns set, I head home. At home, I find Matt, my assigned partner, sitting on the edge of the bed staring at the floor. Matt is still nursing the injury to his leg and the back of his head he received from some of the less tolerant, radical members of the People's Party a few weeks back. They were caught, but released for lack of evidence. Oddly, they even proudly admitted they gave Matt the beating. Matt looks up as a large grin emerges across his face. "Take your jacket off and toss it over there. You must be hot after running in the park." This is our code to cover the computer so we can't be seen or heard. "I have something very important to tell you," whispers Matt. Time passes. I can't even contemplate what Matt told me. It's crazy, way too dangerous. As I arrive at work, everyone is crowded around a new girl and her partner, hired that morning by the agency. The moment I set eyes on her, I was instantly attracted. A wave of unexplainable euphoria came over me. Something in her eyes and smile, I'm not sure what, but it brought me back to my earliest childhood memories. Feelings like this are dangerous and forbidden. Growing up, everyone thought that it was a little odd that I was attracted to girls instead of boys. My two sets of same-sex parents were a little concerned, but they thought it may be just a phase I was going through and I wouldn't need any reassignment counseling. Back in those days, people were more accepting, that some boys preferred girls and some girls preferred boys, but it wasn't the accepted norm. I remember a popular movie growing up, Romero and Romero. It was based on a play written by a famous poet from long ago. Two boys from totally different backgrounds and class status fall in love. The two sets of parents disapproved and forbid them to ever see each other. In the end, Romero and Romero embrace and commit suicide. Later, a sequel was made, Julie and Julie, a little more lighthearted, even comical, but the same theme. There is never a dry eye in the whole theater. Being different from everyone else, I had found it strange that two people of the same sex were attracted to each other. In that era, everyone knew that some people were attracted to the opposite sex. They were neither repulsed nor drawn to it. They were more or less oblivious about it. It even made for some interesting and controversial underground movies and stories. Ever since I could remember, I was obsessed with women. To me, they, or at least many of them, had a magical glow or aura about them. Like a magnet, I was drawn to them despite that being somewhat taboo. I was very shy and self-conscious, so I would fantasize about everything concerning them. My friends thought I was a little weird, but didn't make much of it. I kept my feelings to myself. Enough daydreaming. This is a new era, and such thoughts are dangerous. Even though I have to conceal my inner feelings and attraction to the opposite sex, I have some small consolation that those in the accepted same-sex pairing by the government are usually just as unhappy as I am, because they didn't choose the partner they were assigned. They live in a bland acceptance, undoubtedly induced by the medicated patch we're all required to wear. The next day, I took a bold chance. During a morning break, I wandered over to the new girl, carrying some official papers as an excuse. I approached her. "Ellie," I said, with a little nervousness in my voice, "I'm Neil over in the art department. Welcome." Her partner was nearby with a pleasant but watchful eye. "Ellie, do you like magic tricks?" "Why, sure, why not?" she said in a surprised tone of voice. I pulled out a small gold coin from my pocket and placed it in the palm of my hand. "Watch very carefully," I said. I closed my hand, wiggled my thumb, and with a wave of my other hand, the coin magically disappeared. Ellie covered her mouth to try to conceal a joyous laugh. "What happened to the coin?" she said, with intense curiosity. "I see you're in accounting, keeping track of expenditures," I said. "Maybe it's under those papers." I pointed to a nearby stack. Ellie lifted the papers. There was the coin. "How on our crazy planet did you do that?" exclaimed Ellie. I just smiled. Her assigned partner for life was getting a little impatient and agitated. "Magic," I said with a grin. Ellie picked up the coin, studied it. Then she started to hand it back to me. Then the strangest thing happened. As she handed the coin back to me, her hand ever so lightly brushed against mine. There was what felt like a brief electrical spark. It wasn't painful or anything, just surreal. For a few seconds, that felt like an eternity. Our eyes locked in a gaze. Our expressions turned serious. Then, with a pleasant smile, we went our separate ways, returning to our desks. I fumbled with my papers as if nothing happened. Ellie's partner looked askance at Ellie, who shrugged her shoulders, pretending nothing happened. Walking home that evening, I couldn't help but notice the government oath enforcement sent out by the truthsayers. They were rounding up some girl-boy couples, which is strictly forbidden. I'm not sure how they got caught. Maybe they didn't cover their computer well enough, or maybe the iThought scan machines posted everywhere on the streets figured out what they may have been doing or thinking. I don't dare get involved. The last thing I'd want is a cortex analysis or reproduction consultation, or worse, just to disappear altogether. Back at home, Matt is out again for the evening. I don't ask where he goes, it's none of my business, just curious. Watching TV while eating dinner, the news comes on. A small group of people are protesting, carrying signs and shouting. They are defiantly opposed to the supreme ruler who seized power decades ago, disrupting our long history of cherished personal freedoms in exchange for a world of law and unification. The supreme leader is a charismatic but ignorant and dangerously corrupt cowardly clown. A small but powerful group, equally corrupt, help keep him in permanent power over the rest of us. At a break in the news, there's one of those annoying infomercials. Do you have a non-government prescribed pregnancy? We can help, the announcer says in an authoritative voice. We can help you with cost, avoid lengthy prison time, and end your non-government pregnancy quickly and easily. Just call the number below and one of our representatives will contact you immediately. The news show resumes, more about the protesters. I suddenly jump up from my seat in astonishment. I think that looks like... Yes, it is. Oh my four gods, that's Matt in the crowd. A few days later, back at work, Ellie wanders over to me carrying a bundle of forms and papers. We have that meeting upstairs, remember? Let's take the staircase. You look like you could use the exercise, she grins. My infatuation with her has grown more and more every day. On the staircase, she turns back towards me. Did you remember to bring... She hesitates. In an act of insanity, I lean forwards towards her in an obvious gesture to try to kiss her. Ellie leans back, horrified and startled. A brief pause for what seemed like an eternity passes. Out of the clear blue, Ellie leaps on top of me, almost knocking me down. She wraps her legs around my waist and arms around my shoulders and wildly kisses me on the lips. Papers are flying all over the place. An explosion of years of pent-up passion in her must have been suddenly released. A voice comes from the top of the stairs. Hello? Anyone down there? Is everything okay? Ellie and I scramble for the papers strewn about and head upstairs. The rest of the day was busy working on various ads. A new cologne ad called Men for Men, accompanied by a visual. It needed retouching. It was of two guys well dressed at a party with their arms around each other, smiling, holding the new product. The other product needed work too. Femtastic, a new government medicated patch to wear helps insomnia for women. That ad pictured two women in bed sitting up because they can't sleep. The day was interrupted by a message from our government on our computer screens. The supreme leader had announcements. He was finally trying to appear official, like he was in command and knew what he was doing. He is handing down more and more dictatorial edicts. He comes across as a low-class fool, but very clever. Today you'll be happy to know I'm selecting 4 more government positions. You know and love all these people. They'll do a great service for you and our country. Let me introduce the appointments and their positions. All of us at the office, silent and stunned, looked at each other. There were supposed to be elections at the end of the month for those positions. It wouldn't have mattered much anyway, because the candidates were all hand-picked devotees of the new regime. We returned to our work, but were still silent. At the end of the day, as we left work, we were given a larger, different medical patch we were required to wear. It was presented as a new, stronger formula to ward off the long-forgotten plagues. These were a different color and had a unique code on them to make them much harder to counterfeit. On my way home, as I hoped I'd be unobserved, I scratched off the patch. I tried to scrape off the medically infused layer, but wound up ruining the whole patch. Now I'm in big trouble. Without the patch, I could get arrested, as we were randomly checked for them. Perhaps at work the next day, I'll just claim I was tossing and turning all night, and the next morning the patch was gone. I'll get some suspicious glances, but handed a new patch, but the event would be logged onto the computer, flagging me if this happens too many times. When I got home that evening, as I entered the apartment, I was startled to see Matt sitting on the edge of the bed. Sitting next to Matt was one of the girl protesters with her arm draped around him. Both looked beat up, with bruises and some makeshift bandages. "Matt, are you crazy? You can't bring her here. We'll both get arrested." I'm sorry. I didn't know where else to hide. No one saw us escape," Matt said in a distressed, wheezy voice. "But how did you get her in here?" I said. "You know that back alley? It leads to the ladder to the roof. There's a door on our roof no one uses," Matt said with a half-hearted grin. "The three of us crashed for the night in one bed." Matt and the girl had vanished by the time I awoke the next day. There were some small traces of blood and pieces of bandage on the bed next to me, remnants of the injuries they had suffered. I had suspected for some time that Matt was illegally involved with a woman, which is now officially a crime. Matt seemed a little less down in the dumps than usual. A few uneventful weeks passed. Matt came and went often in the darkness of night, usually not alone. At work, I found a small typed note on my desk. "Remember that ad campaign a while back? Meet me in the park after dark, Cologne." It was an idea that was tossed around. Follow through on that. The note was unsigned. I had no recollection of such an ad, but had a hunch. After work, I wandered over to the park that evening and waited as the two suns set, and our two moons slowly rose up one by one in the sky. It was a beautiful but chilly evening. On a bench near me was a female figure wearing a concealing long coat. She sat down but did not look at me. I stared at the ground, made an obvious gesture of getting up, turned and walked away. I sensed that I was being followed, but didn't look back. I walked past my house, turned into the alley, and with my back against the wall, watched to see if anyone followed. Turning the corner into the alley was Ellie. I silently nodded and walked to the end of the alley, up the ladder, across the roof, and down to my apartment with Ellie following. Once in my apartment, we stared at each other, kissed, and Ellie went to wash up. Fortunately, Matt wasn't at home. Not that I really cared, as he was into much more drama than I could ever be. I took my coat and hat and put down my briefcase. Loosening my tie, I slowly turned, my eyes open in a wide, cartoonish gaze. There stood Ellie before me, stark naked. I left for work the next day. Ellie had vanished earlier into the darkness of night. On my way walking to work, I see two men in matching overalls, followed by an imposing member of the Supreme Leader's private police force. The two workers are headed to the labor liberation camp. They have a slight, spastic, jerky gait to their walk. They have a blank, non-connected stare, but also a large, tortured, happy grin. Without making direct eye contact, they are overly congenial to everyone they pass, even though they really don't know everyone. "Hello, how are you today?" "I'm doing great." "Hello, how are you today?" "Hello, I'm doing fine. And you?" they exclaim in a programmed animated voice. It is a terrifying spectacle. Everyone pretends not to look at them. Then I notice what I only heard about. There is a small reflective metal plate on the side of their head, surrounded by stitches and scar tissue. The medical procedure appears to be sloppily done in haste. Their work cap is a poor attempt to conceal what was done to them, as it is ill-fitted and slips around, falling off as they stumble on ahead. As time passes, more and more of these unfortunate victims are seen on the street, marched off to work by the government's private enforcers. At work, Ellie and I are careful to try to act as if nothing was going on. Her partner must be getting suspicious. I don't know how she slips away from her so much of the time. Our routine meeting in the park and sneaking across the roof into my apartment continues for several days. Late one night, while Ellie and I are curled up in bed, the rattle of a key in the door suddenly awakens us. "Climb out the window," I whisper. Before we can react, Matt quietly slithers in, followed by Linda. With a big surprised smile and sneer, his voice cracks. "You too?" Now the four of us are clothed, laying in bed side by side on our backs, just staring at the ceiling in deep contemplation. It would almost be comical. The four of us laying side by side, just staring up. It has my stomach in knots with both the excitement with Ellie, but with dread if we get caught. Matt breaks the silence. We can't go on like this. The next day at work, I'm amazed that I can still get past security with my distressed medical patch, which I carefully remove and reapply every day. When we arrive at our floor, we find that the government has stationed a member of the private police force on every floor. They wander around studying everyone. They are well armed. Although they have no idea what we do, they have the power to arrest and remove anyone they claim is disturbing the greater good. The government has been infiltrating every aspect of life, especially the media. There is only one news outlet. The Supreme Leader interrupts our day with a news announcement. It is forcefully broadcast across our computer screens. He introduces himself as your favorite Supreme Leader. He then makes several personally aggrandizing proclamations. That night, Matt and I sit on the side of the bed. The women are off somewhere to keep up appearances. Matt turns to me, covers our computer for privacy, and says, "I think I have a plan to escape with the girls. You know the great divide beyond the checkpoints? I believe that if we..." Matt is interrupted by a shout from the police out in the street. Matt 37962. We have been assigned numbers long ago for last names as a gift from the Supreme Leader. These numbers are embedded somewhere on our bodies. I don't know where, but the scanners can see them and identify us. No one gets away with impersonating anyone else, especially the police. Matt and I rush to the window and peer out. The enforcer is holding up a bunch of counterfeit medical patches. "Matt, I think these belong to you. Come down peacefully." Matt, partially dressed, rushes out the door and up the staircase to escape. A drone is at the steps, hovering and waiting for him. If Matt had heard the soft buzz of the flying drone, he might have gone in another direction. Matt is zapped unconscious by a glowing green beam emanating from the drone. He falls down unconscious. It's too late for me to help. I shut the door as I hear the police running up the stairs towards Matt. They carry him away. A couple of days later, I'm on the street. Ellie is a few yards away, trying not to appear as if she's following me. I see more and more of the government workers in overalls led by police. They are all off to the labor liberation camp factories. A purple cloud hangs over the distant factories. This ever-expanding purple cloud has been blamed by the outlawed scientists of long ago for the dangerous cooling of our planet. No one dares speak of this now. As I pass the workers, I think I see Matt. He is in overalls. His eyes have a blank, vacant stare. I want to shout out to him, but I don't dare as I notice the chrome metal plate in his head. Matt doesn't recognize me at all. He just mindlessly smiles, saying to everyone and to no one, "Hello, how are you today?" "I'm doing great." "Hello, how are you today?" "Hello, I'm fine. And you?" Days later, at work, Ellie arrives at her floor. I watch from the distance. As she enters the large fluorescent workroom, her partner is crying, pointing her out to the police. Ellie turns and runs to the staircase. On the staircase, Ellie is confronted by a large flying drone. Its lights glow bright red, ready to shoot her. Ellie instantly swings her handbag, smashing the drone to the ground. It sparks and sputters. Somehow, miraculously, Ellie escapes through the basement and out through a tunnel to the street. She must have planned her escape some time ago. In an alley near my house, as I head home after work, I hear Ellie's voice. Over here, she whispers. There are drones and police searching everywhere for her. Early the next morning, I hear Ellie, who is throwing up in the bathroom. Morning sickness. Ellie is pregnant. We have little choice but to escape through the border across the Great Divide. I tell her as I stuff some belongings, some canned food, and a water bottle into my backpack and grab my briefcase. It's only a matter of time until they are after me because of Matt and because of my lost medical patch. In front of the building is someone's Land Rover with the keys still in the ignition. I throw our stuff in the back seat. As I get into the vehicle, a drone approaches us. I look up and smile and wave as if everything was normal. As the drone hesitates, scanning my implanted ID, I turn and hurl my drafting T-square from my briefcase at the drone. It knocks off one of the propellers, and the drone falls to the ground damaged. For some strange reason, I pick up the drone to take with us. Touching parts and buttons on the back of the drone as I climb into the stolen rover, the drone accidentally emits a green beam and with a flash of light blows a large hole in the street pavement. Hold the drone, don't touch the back of it, I tell Ellie, who is stunned by what I just did. We drive off. Amazingly, with everyone looking for us, we aren't stopped as we race towards the border miles away. Unbeknownst to us, we stole one of the enforcement vehicles. A serious offense, but it was a lucky break for us. We arrive at the border. We have never seen it before. Apparently, we only got this far because of the official vehicle. On the edge of the border, there is a never-ending row of towering statues of the worshipped Impaling Post. On each one is a figure of the ancient wise one, hideously tortured, mounted on the post. It is a warning to all. A guard marches over. "What's going on?" he demands. He is suspicious and already radioed to command that there was activity at his checkpoint. He is heavily armed. The government doesn't allow anyone to pass in either direction, entering or exiting the border set up by the supreme leader. I step out of the vehicle. "We found this damaged drone a few clicks from here," I said in an official voice. As he approached, I fumbled with the wires on the back of the drone. A green beam and flash of light from the drone hits him, and with a small explosion he is knocked to the ground unconscious. I hop back into the Land Rover and crash through the barricade, entering the forbidden zone. Ellie and I hear the whizzing of drones flying in the distance towards us. Loudspeakers on the enforcement vehicles are shouting, "Halt! Stop, or you will be shot." A green beam hits our vehicle, disabling it. We swerve into a ditch. Ellie and I run, abandoning the rover and our belongings. There are drones everywhere, firing green beams, flashes of light, and fiery explosions everywhere. Soldiers are chasing behind us, shouting and shooting at us. Ellie and I slide into a ditch. It is filled with hundreds of decaying bodies. The stench makes us retch. There are severed arms everywhere. It is possible people severed their own arm, guessing that the embedded ID number was located there. We run on. I hear a loud explosion behind me. I look back. Where Ellie had stood was a smoldering plume of smoke. I cry out, but then run further ahead. One of the green beams grazes my arm. I'm injured. There are green beams descending everywhere. Large flashes of light surround me. Explosions everywhere. I'm so tired. So many flashes of light, getting brighter and brighter and brighter. The most cherished moments of my life flash before the eyes of my subconscious mind. Everything suddenly goes black. The morning light of the sun cuts across my room in a warm glow. I rub my eyes as I slowly wake from a deep sleep. I sit up on my cot as my eyes survey the barren, empty, and dusty room. I am completely alone but at peace. I put on my overalls and cap as a loudspeaker announces the ID numbers of those to report to work at the factories. I head down the steps, smiling and carrying a small toolbox. I can be heard cheerfully saying to the walls and the door, Hello, how are you today? I'm doing great. Hello, how are you today? Hello, I'm doing fine. And you? Hello, how are you today? I'm doing great.